everyone. I want to just give a very big welcome to today's guest, Jessica Lattif. She is the founder of Not Working in Tech, a platform and community challenging toxic workplace culture and the myth that burnout is just part of success in the tech industry. As a Jewish and Lebanese American woman with ADHD, raised in an exceptionally diverse New York City suburb, she's always been an outsider, observing, analyzing, questioning, and pattern matching the world around her. And you hold a MS in nutrition and public policy, which is very diverse. So I love that. And she has run her own sustainable seafood business, building a 10 plus year in tech before building her career in tech. Today, she works with individuals and organizations to pinpoint and resolve what's not working and to reimagine healthier, more human ways to show up at work. Thank you so much for being here, joining us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. You describe yourself as someone who's always been a bit of an outsider, and I'm really curious about that. Is as a therapist and a coach and someone who does parts work, I don't know if internal family
I
systems,
do. I'm very familiar.
where did she get this? Not that I'm questioning your system and how
Sure.
it feels, but when did you first notice that you saw things differently than the people around you?
Yeah, I would say, as somebody who grew up in an interfaith family, I was always aware that even within me, the two sides of my family were very different. My dad's side of the family, my dad was raised Catholic and they came to the US from Lebanon. My mom's side of the family is Jewish and so we celebrated different holidays with different sides of our family. There was always a narrative around my parents meeting and like courtship that one side of the family was a little bit less accepting and one side of the family was more accepting. And as a young kid, when you hear those kinds of stories, it just makes you question and wonder, right? Why would anyone be less or more accepting? What did they or didn't they accept? And do I have those same qualities in me, right? Does this side of my family accept this other part of me, and why or why not?
So, was there controversy when your parents got together and planned to get married?
There was.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was. I would say from my dad's side of the family, they were very welcoming to my mom. From the Jewish side of the family, my Jewish grandparents really wanted their daughter to marry somebody Jewish and carrying a legacy of persecution and feeling like your culture and your people have been endangered. It's a strong value for Jewish families to be able to carry on Jewish traditions. So, as an adult, I totally understand that desire. But as a kid, it was confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were growing up in a really diverse area of New York,
New Jersey, but right
New
outside the
Jersey.
city.
Okay.
New
Okay.
Yorkers are quick to correct. So,
Okay. Sorry, New
yeah,
Jersey.
that's all good.
How did that shape and how did it shape how you read a room now and or a workplace?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say because I grew up someplace where there were so many different kinds of people, my neighbors spoke many languages, my classmates, parents, or classmates themselves moved to our town from different countries or different regions.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable navigating diverse cultural environments. That feels like home to me.
Yeah.
And so I've noticed that I'm somebody who doesn't love when everyone is the same. I don't love
Huh.
when everyone looks the same, talks the same, has the same beliefs. That's very uncomfortable to me. And I describe myself as an outsider because even within me, there are these multiple parts, right? And so I've never been somebody who, except within my family, where we do have some of the similar multicultural intermarriages and things, like
Yeah.
outside of my own family, I'm different from others. And so even in places where everyone is Jewish or everyone is Middle Eastern, I'm still a little different.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just absolutely shapes how you see every environment you're in. So I grew up in the opposite. I grew up in a very small town in Northeast Missouri that was all one culture. very much. Different religions, but different denominations. So there were Catholics and Protestants and Baptists. And it's interesting because I never felt like I belonged or fit in there. And so
Hmm.
when I left, I was like, oh, this feels comfortable. I moved out of St. Louis around Washington University, so it was very diverse. And I remember being so happy and excited. My son go to school and he's, oh, can you make sushi for my lunchbox? And I was like, what?
Can
He's like,
I?
well, such and such gets sushi in their lunchbox. And I was like, they do? Oh my God, someone does that. But I remember thinking, how cool, because he was growing up in this really diverse and also really intellectual community, just full
Yes.
of professors from around the world's kids because of where we landed. That was the school he was in. And I was like, this is amazing. This feels good. Yeah, it definitely, your comfort can come in many ways. I think I grew up uncomfortable in my community. So now diversity feels better. But very cool that you got to grow up in an area where there were people speaking every possible language. And you also had access to New York City, like easy
Yeah.
access, I'm assuming, which is
Yes.
also,
Yeah, I feel very lucky. As a kid, I didn't love living in the suburbs, especially proximity to New York. I wanted to be in the city.
yeah.
And looking back as an adult and as a parent, I feel so grateful for where I grew up because there was both the diversity and culture that comes with being in a big metro area, but also it's a very safe, protected environment to grow up in.
And you could do some normal kid things for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, we rode our bikes to different neighbors' houses and went to the park and walked home from school together through our downtown and just feel very lucky that we had the best pizza, bagels, sushi, Greek food, Korean food.
Every,
I'm pretty spoiled in that
yeah.
respect. And I think
Yes.
that's one of the reasons why, as an adult, too, I'm really drawn to places where there's access to all kinds of culture, food, art, that kind of stuff.
Yes, that's amazing. Yeah, you couldn't live any place without that now. It would be
No,
impossible.
unfortunately.
Yes, we were always surprised. St. Louis had a lot of culture and food in the area we were in. And then we moved to Florida. And when we moved here, which was in 2011, we're in St. Petersburg, Florida. I was like, I need to go back. Like this, I can't do this. There isn't good pizza. There's nothing. There's no Indian food. My ex-husband was Indian. It's like, but fortunately, this community has grown and become much more multicultural, and the restaurants and the art came in. So it's a very little city in Florida than a lot of the area or area other parts of Florida. So it evolved with us and
Yeah, I've been to St. Petersburg. It's a beautiful city. The
yeah.
Dali Museum and all the
Yes.
beaches. It's great.
Yes. Yes. We love it. We feel like it's a little gym. But my daughter wants to come to New York or New Jersey for school in 2 years when
Okay.
she graduates. So we're actually heading up at the end of
Great.
the summer to tour some schools in the city and in New
Wonderful.
Jersey. So,
That's
yes.
exciting.
Yes. Speaking of school, so I'm curious about your master's in nutrition and public
Yeah.
policy that got you to where you are now.
Yeah. So, as an undergraduate, I studied nutrition as well, nutrition and dietetics. And I was lucky to get a lot of exposure to food and cuisine through some of the electives that I was able to take. After college, I went and worked on some farms in France. And I decided, before that, I was really interested in ways to make a positive impact. And
Okay.
as an undergrad, I had worked in a hospital in a clinical setting and quickly realized that the hospital style intervention, where you're working with people who are already ill in many cases and maybe who are towards the middle or end of their lives, they already really have their habits ingrained.
Yeah.
But working with younger people or working in a policy setting, you have the ability to make a positive impact on a much broader scale. And so I was really interested in food policy and nutrition policy, and that motivated me to apply for graduate programs that were in that field. And just thought to myself, if I didn't get into graduate school, maybe I'll just stay in Europe. But I didn't. I got
You got
into
this.
graduate school. I went to graduate school at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy in Boston.
Yep.
And my focus was a small program called Agriculture, Food, and Environment. And it was really this very intersectional program that was at the crossroads of public policy, public health, farm and agriculture policy and history and development, and then also human nutrition and food systems. So that was a really interesting place to be. I went in hoping to work with kids and in schools, helping to develop some of those farm to school pipelines, school garden programs where kids are learning, growing and eating food that they grew themselves and making things like smoothies or muffins or whatever out of whole foods that then they could learn, hey, this tastes really good and it's accessible. It doesn't have to be confusing or intimidating.
Yeah. So that's what you planned on doing.
That's what I planned on doing. That's what brought me out to California.
Okay.
I've just was really inspired by some of the urban agriculture work that was happening here in Oakland and just the Bay Area and Northern California being such a hub for local agriculture and also really more progressive and sustainable agricultural practices. And so I was drawn to this area, and it was a really tumultuous time economically. I graduated from grad school a couple years after that world economic collapse in 2008. So
Yeah.
going into graduate school, the landscape looked very different than coming out.
Yeah.
And the jobs that I thought maybe would be available and accessible to me ended up just not really materializing. My partner at the time, who I had met in graduate school, and I were both cobbling together our living and not really finding a full time job. And we had joked, oh, we should start like this community supported fishery type of business that we had been able to access in Boston. New England, even though it's a lot older than the development that's happened out here in California, there's still quite a lot of like small fishing towns
Yeah.
out there. And in California, a lot of the conservation policy actually led to consolidation in the seafood industry because it's a burden for small businesses to follow stringent policies.
Yep.
And we just didn't find access to the local seafood that we knew was here. After a couple of years of joking about doing it and still just cobbling together part time jobs, we decided to strike out on our own and start that business ourselves. And that's what we did for a couple of years, but then realized number one, we were breaking even, but we weren't making a living. Neither of us had a background in business. We both were coming from the public policy and like health or conservation worlds. And we realized we needed something else to earn a living. So we still kept the business, but then I started looking around to see what kinds of full time jobs I might be able to leverage my skills to support us. And that was 2013. We had a lot of friends in the tech industry, and there was this growing movement of women in tech and diversifying the tech industry. So a lot of folks had recommended, hey, look in tech. There's a ton
Hmm.
of hiring happening. And that was my entry point. I did a 10-week programming boot camp in San Francisco and learned full stack technology basics.
Yeah.
I learned some web development, some software engineering, the terminology, just got access to what that world looked like.
Yeah.
And that was how I ended up getting my first job in technology and ultimately stayed there for over 10 years.
Wow. I think that many people feel like a pressure to follow a straight line. And if you've gotten a degree in something, that better be the thing you do. But you really took this kind of winding road, which it sounds
Yeah.
like gave you opportunities. What did that experience give you that you think taking a straighter path wouldn't have? Like, how did it help?
Yeah, before that, even before going back to school, because I had left school as an undergrad when I was 19 and I already was on this winding path.
Yeah.
So I knew for myself that I just am somebody who's very multifaceted.
Yeah.
I'm interested in a lot of things. And my degrees and my education ended up being on the STEM and science side, but initially I was really interested in liberal arts, drama, theater, poetry. I thought I was going to be an artist. And so that winding career path has really allowed me to explore and develop the different sides of myself.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And then you can feel more dedicated, more sure of yourself when you take each next step,
Yeah,
right?
I think I struggled a lot with what is deemed imposter syndrome. I don't
Yeah.
love that word because I'm somebody who just believes in being allowed to be a beginner at something and just being allowed to be learning and not have it be like a dysfunction or a syndrome, right? But it allowed me to recognize and have some perspective around, hey, I did this once in this industry and I was a beginner and then I grew and I developed expertise. I know it gave me the confidence to be able to do that again multiple times.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't love the word imposter syndrome, but I do feel it many times. I have felt
Totally.
it many times
Yeah,
in my life. I did
absolutely.
photography for 5 years while I was raising my kids. And I would say I would never call myself a photographer. And someone who frequently hired me to do marketing would say, "You are a photographer." And I was like, "But I didn't go to school for it." And she's like, "You're doing incredible work. You're still a
Yep.
photographer." And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that was the first time I was like, "Oh, yes, you're right." And I got a JD and went to law school and did all the things and still felt like an imposter the whole time I practiced. So, yeah,
I totally get that.
yes, but the work is around getting over that. And now I feel like I don't have it nearly as much.
And I think especially being a woman in a professional setting, like
Mm,
these environments were not built for us. And
no,
so there's a way in which you're already coming to it as an outsider and having to prove yourself a little bit
yeah,
more. And that's daunting, right? It's hard.
yes, yes. I remember being told by the law firm that hired me, "We're family friendly," and quickly realizing and being told, family friendly does not mean mother friendly. And that may be a controversial statement,
Totally.
but it was true. I was still expected to be there before the partner and after the part and stay until he was gone, even if my
Yep.
kid had a soccer game and I came in at 6 o'clock in the morning. It didn't matter. You don't leave until he leaves. You don't make the game. And I was like, oh, this isn't family friendly. Family friendly for my family or for me work. And I'm curious in the tech industry, so you spent 10 plus years there. What did you see there? What was that working in that world like?
Yeah, I think so many things in life, it's in one way, it's what you make of it. Other ways, it could be treacherous to navigate. There were wonderful things about working in tech. I was really drawn to technology because of how innovative the field is. I've always been interested in technology. My dad worked in technology during the first dot-com boom in the early 2000s in New York, and that was so cool, right? He shared stories of these companies that were doing really exciting things with their technology, but also workplaces that were quite progressive compared
Yeah,
to other corporate environments.
yeah,
And even more so in California in the 20s, you wear whatever you want, you bring your whole self to work. Those were some mantras that we heard coming into the industry that was appealing to me, right? I never had seen myself in a corporate environment. So I wasn't somebody that was going to be wearing business suits and high heels to my job every day. I was like, I need to work somewhere where I can wear my cute skirts and boots if I want to, or
yeah,
jeans and a funky concert t shirt, or just to be able to be myself.
yeah.
And I think depending on the company and the size of the company, that can be possible. But I also think, just like any corporate environment, corporate tech tends to have a level of standardized expectations and ways that everyone is supposed to show up that can impact people in very disparate ways depending on how mainstream of a life you've had, right? And so if you're somebody that looks like the dominant beauty standard and you've always dressed in a way that's just business casual, it's going to be just superficially a lot easier for you to fit in a corporate tech environment than if you're somebody who hasn't. In a lot of surface kind of ways, the tech industry was a place where I thought I could find a modicum of success as somebody non-traditional.
Yeah.
Um, and then in deeper ways, I really didn't know what it was going to be like to work in a corporate environment. I'm an open minded person, I'm flexible. I was really excited to embark on a new career journey. But the reality is, in corporate environments, especially for folks who are neurodiverse, there just is there are these cultural unspoken expectations that can be really hard to fit if you're somebody that does better when things are like spelled out clearly, or is a bit of an outsider, or feels like you feel like different.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you were ready to leave, did you recognize that there was some level of burnout? I know it's a buzzword.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Yeah. When I left tech, I was incredibly burned out. I had taken a number of breaks throughout my time in the technology industry. I became a mom when for my first tech job, I was hired when I was 4 months pregnant. And that was a whole journey in and of itself. I was the first person at that company in the United States to take parental leave. And it was hard. I was at a startup where everyone was like 10 years younger than me. And I was 32, but everybody was like 22. The only people that I worked with who had kids were executives. And those people had nannies and they lived in fancy zip codes. And that wasn't my life either. I was coming to technology from having been an entrepreneur in the food world where we were barely breaking even.
Right.
So for me, putting my bills on auto pay and having a salary for the first time was like huge.
Yeah.
Um, and it's tough to be the first of something, right? It's just
Yep.
in some ways I'm used to being a trailblazer for myself,
Yeah.
and in other ways I really wished that there were other moms that were there to help me understand what it was going to be like. It was really tough. So yeah, I took parental leave, I took a number of breaks over the course of my tech career. I have my older child is autistic. And so that journey of learning to parent a neurodivergent kid, learning to figure out what kinds of supports he needed and how to attune with him and support his development was a winding path as well. And there were definitely times when I had to pump the brakes at work and say, the demands of constantly being on at a tech job are too much for me to meet right now, while I'm also trying to balance the demands of what my child needs. So that was part of it. And then also just working in a place where the demands of working someplace where it can be very chaotic.
Yeah.
And the last role that I had in the technology world was as a senior engineering manager, which I was really excited that I got to the top of this mountain
Right.
when I started out in tech, like being an engineer or being an engineering manager is like the top of the pyramid.
A senior
And
engineer.
yeah, and so I was very proud of myself that I had gotten myself to that place. But the environment that I was in was just incredibly chaotic. There was really not a lot of leadership. The person that hired me quit 5 days after I started, having told me, I'm so excited to train you as an engineering manager. And then they were like, peace, I got a new job. So that
Oh
was a
God.
red flag. You
Right.
basically
Like,
lied to my face because you were interviewing the whole time. You were telling me that you
right.
were
And you
excited to
wanted
hire
some.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then it was just tough. It was a tough environment. It was a tough team. It was infrastructure engineering, which is a pretty esoteric type of engineering, especially for folks who are not classically trained in computer software. And it was not a diverse workplace. And that was a kind of a shock to my system. I had come from an operations team that we had grown over the course of about 5 years to be an incredibly diverse team. And my new job had told me, oh, we're excited about your experience in building diverse teams.
Yeah.
But when I joined the company, I found out that a lot of the ways the company operated and the status quo kind of kept reinforcing just hiring the same kinds of people over and over, right? So if I had an open headcount on my team, I had five white guys in my DMs going, "Hey, I've got a buddy who would love to apply for this job." And I was like, okay, thanks. Also, I'm trying to build a diverse pipeline here of talented candidates who may not look like the people we already have here, but who are really interested in building a career in infrastructure engineering, right? Not just like your buddy who wants to dip a toe in something new. And that was very disenchanting.
Yeah.
And then I had a few experiences of just pretty intense observing discrimination and observing the ways in which this, I would say, pretty regressive attitude was very entrenched around me. And I didn't feel supported over time.
Yeah.
I had moments where my manager changed and it was someone supportive, but then they went on maternity leave and I got put with somebody new who was questioning my qualifications of being there. So it that all really takes a toll on you. And I left that job having had a series of illnesses I just couldn't recover. I got the flu and then I got a cold and then on top of the cold I got a sinus infection. It was like one thing after another.
Yeah.
And it culminated in returning from an unexpected work trip to a performance plan from a newer manager who had been a peer that I trusted. And I had not received critical feedback in my role when I got a performance review a couple months before that. So it was a real shock. And as somebody in leadership, it shouldn't be a shock when you have to coach someone on their performance, they should see it coming. They should be able to
Absolutely.
recognize, hey, my manager has been talking to me about some ways that I really need to improve.
Right.
And so, with that, between the illnesses and the performance management, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take some medical leave. And that's what I did. And I took a several months leave and then I didn't return.
Wow. Wow. It sounds like that was a way out of a difficult
Yeah.
situation. Why do you think, or how long do you think you were feeling unwell and ignoring the signs of burnout before you actually left?
It's hard to say because I would say in tech and in these really high demanding jobs in general, especially corporate environments, it can be really up and down. You can have 3, 6, 9 months of high output, high performance moments that feel really good. And then something can shift. Maybe it's a reorg or a manager change or your team changes or your work portfolio changes.
Right.
And suddenly the high output, high productivity that you were able to sustain feels completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
Or a health issue pops up for people, or you're having another child, or things shift. Things can change really quickly in life. We've all been there, right?
Yep.
So I would say I was feeling low grade burnout for years. On top of this high demand, high pressure job, I was a sole provider for my family in the Bay Area. I My husband at the time wasn't working and that was really stressful for me. I repeatedly had the conversation that I can't do it alone, but things didn't change. So, on top of shifting work demands, growing kids, I also was going through a divorce in 2021. And depending on what moment of your divorce you're in, it can feel really freeing and empowering, but it can also be incredibly emotionally draining.
Absolutely. For you and for your children.
Yes.
It's a transition regardless.
Yes.
And it's almost always the process itself is just so difficult. We have figured out how to make it healthy. There's no way. There's just no way right now.
Yeah, and it is something I would say that you feel like you have to hide,
Mhm.
right? Like so
Yeah.
many other parts of the corporate world, like when you're in an environment where everyone is pretty conforming,
Yep.
like everyone's married and everyone's talking about, oh, my husband does this, my wife does this. And I'm like,
I'm doing it alone.
I'm alone. Yep.
Right. Uh, I heard this really interesting thing, and it's tech related and it's corporate related, so maybe you'll have fun about it. Yesterday,
Sure.
I was reading a headline, and then I read the article about a woman who they're given, I can't remember the name of the app, but they're given talk space maybe through their corporation, and she used it as her mental health outlet. And I believe it was trained to be like mental health support. And she got it through her workplace and they had access to it. It wasn't considered therapy notes. And so this is probably going to be a new thing. And she was let go based on something she shared in that space. And I thought, oh my God, as a former lawyer and a person advising
Mm,
people going through divorce, I'm already saying what you put into ChatGPT and Claude can be used against you. So please be careful. Those
yeah.
are not confidential places.
Yep.
Anything you put in there could be used against you in family court. But now we're
Mm,
talking about people being let go or having employers use your mental health tools that they provide you
yeah.
to get rid of you. And I thought, oh my God. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that? Yeah, that story.
First of all, my heart really goes out to that person.
Yeah.
How what an awful experience to feel like you have an outlet where you can put your hard feelings and talk about the hard shit that you're going through in your life and then to have that weaponized against you. That's traumatic. And it's going to those things stay with you and it takes a lot to get past that and to heal and to trust a
Yeah.
workplace again.
Yeah.
So my heart just super goes out to that person. It reminds me a lot of the way companies would tell you, oh, if you're going through something hard, you can always talk to HR. You can always talk to your employee resources person. They're there to help you. And that's not true,
Nope.
right? They're there to protect the company.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
even as a manager, it was hard sometimes to balance things that my team members would share with me about what they were going through with their life and what I knew to be true about the demands of the workplace and what we
Yeah.
expected of them in their performance.
Right.
You know, and I
Right.
would often counsel people to take leave rather than try to stick it out when you're going through something really hard. Because if that hard thing begins impacting your work performance, I can't judge you taking into account the hard stuff that you're going through in life. I just have to judge you against what everybody else is doing. Right.
Yes.
And so as a manager, it can be a really tough spot to
Yeah.
be supporting people who are going through a mental health crisis, a physical health crisis, a work life crisis, right? Like
Right.
things like divorce or aging parents having an illness, kids who are
Sick
in a
children.
mental or health crisis, right? So those are, and the one thing I will say that's a bright spot in the tech industry is that there are really solid benefits. And
Yeah.
so it's all the more important when you have those benefits, paid short-term disability, to take them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big things that I advocate with clients is take your fucking leave. We
Right.
get paid not to work in tech. That was where not working in tech came from for me was being on leave and being like, "Oh my God, it feels so good
No.
to be not working in
Right.
tech, right? To be in tech and to not be working."
Yeah.
Because suddenly there was the space to just even to let yourself see all the things that aren't working. When you're so busy and you're rushing from thing to thing, you have blinders on.
Yeah.
You can't let those things get in because they'll drag you down, right? So
Right.
you just have to be like, staying the course. I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to worry about that. But all those things that you're compartmentalizing against, like, what if that's the real thing in life that you're supposed to be prioritizing? right?
Right.
And that's what I realized when I could finally take a break was like, I can't ignore my special needs child that really needs my attention and needs me to fight for him through school and through interventions. I
Right.
can't ignore my own health and the fact that I kept getting sick over and over and I couldn't recover. What does that lead to over time?
Yeah.
My health is really important to me, as everyone's health should be to them, right? And we live in a place where we don't have a strong social safety net.
No.
And so if something happens to cause you to be debilitated or unable to work over time, that's really like a threat in the long term if you can't have health insurance or you can't provide financially for your family. We see all the time people end up in really dire straits.
Yeah, absolutely. Healthcare costs are the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States, I believe,
Exactly.
still. So, yeah,
Yep.
and it's very difficult, especially we are in an entrepreneur type culture also.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, healthcare costs are outrageous, but it's actually, I'm going to probably get backlash for saying this, but in some ways, it's less expensive to be uninsured. Like the discounts you get as an uninsured person are
Yeah.
huge.
Or paying in cash,
Or
right?
paying,
As long as you don't, if you don't have a chronic illness or if you don't
correct.
have a
But you
catastrophic
never know when a
illness.
chronic illness or a
Yeah,
catastrophic illness or an accident are going to happen. And so we're like,
exactly.
ugh, because if it happens and you don't have insurance, then you're really screwed, right? Like
Yeah.
totally screwed. So yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But I do want to ask what your thoughts are on this movement for people to be entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a therapist, a coach, a podcast host, and it's all private practice. The
Yeah.
landscape of therapy private practice has changed immensely and continues to shift is a little scary as corporations are now basically buying access to insurance companies and credentialing. And many people feel that will be required at some point to go through one of the corporations in order to be credentialed with insurance companies. So that's
Oh, wow.
a whole thing. But many people in, I think, the therapy space always the goal was to have my own practice. And what we don't realize, and what I didn't realize, because this is my third career, was how much business, marketing, social media, like how much
Yeah, the
time
overhead.
that overhead, either you pay a lot of money for someone else to do it for you, I feel like myself and many of my colleagues are being dragged into the hustle culture
Yep.
because the only way to get referrals and put your name out there and do these, I don't know, side gigs, I guess you would say, or other ways, other streams of income is to start learning how to market yourself. And
Right.
I'm not in the only field that this is happening to.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's almost, oh, I own my own business. And sometimes it still feels toxic because,
Yeah. And I think you're getting at something that's really critical for everyone in the United States today, which is again this dismantling of our social safety net. It's toxic because hustle culture is toxic and hustle culture is the water that we're all swimming in,
yeah,
right? And this idea of this rugged individualism and doing it all on your own, right? It's awesome to be an entrepreneur if that's for you, but you also shouldn't have to be struggling and stressing and building your entire thing from scratch for elder care and health care and child care and schooling and extracurriculars, right? We've just dismantled all of these pieces of the social safety net that in the past people could rely a little bit more on systems
yeah,
to provide. And if we look at other countries that should have comparable standard of living, people are very happy. People are so much happier, like in Western European countries, for example, where there's humane parental leave and maternal leave policies, or they have pretty much unlimited sick time so
yeah,
that you're not stressing that you're going to get fired if you get sick.
right.
Those kinds of things. And the number one, obviously, is the universal health care
Yeah,
because it is a burden that individuals should not have to bear.
right.
So I would say in my opinion, this toxic, rugged individualism that we have in the United States is really one of the main drivers of that kind of burnout that entrepreneurs feel, even with folks that are successful, right? It's when you're successful, then you're hiring other people to do these things for you. And then those people's livelihoods are depending on you continuing to do the thing.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of pressure no matter what.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. The more you are making or the more successful you are, the more people depend on you, the more stress you feel. Yeah, absolutely. And the bar just keeps getting raised to how much you need to do in order to keep that same status.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me about what you're doing now and how you're helping people with these types of things.
Yeah, starting about a year and a half ago, I began work on the platform that I run called Not Working in Tech. It's a website, a podcast, and a community that's geared towards addressing some of these issues that especially folks in tech are grappling with around this really quickly changing workplaces and unrealistic demands that are just constant and round the clock availability, seeing people who can work 12, 13, 14-hour days, getting ahead and recognizing, oh, I need to have more limits on my workday because I have these outside demands. So I work with individuals and I also work with companies to understand what specifics in each case might be driving their burnout or toxic work cultures, and addressing some of those drivers to make the environment feel more sustainable. For individuals, it's about radical reprioritization, putting yourself first, being willing to say no to things and understanding, anticipating, and accepting the consequences of that. For organizations, it's about recognizing where unrealistic, unrelenting demands on individuals are actually burning people out and reducing their productivity.
So if individuals come to you, they might not necessarily want to leave their job, but want to
Right.
live, they want help being coached on how to live life more freely, taking care of themselves better. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'm not a coach. I'm not a career coach.
Okay.
I work with people in these acute moments.
Okay.
So we might do 3, 4, 5 sessions over the course of a few months.
Yep.
But one of the big things that I'm doing is connecting people with resources, whether
Hmm.
it's career coaching, therapy, a retreat, something where they can find the people that are going to be their support system and
Yeah.
sustain them over the long term, right? I'm not a therapist, I'm not a career coach, but I am somebody who recognizes that it's critical to navigate these really challenging times with help. We cannot
Yeah.
do it alone.
Yeah.
And so much of what leads people to burnout is just taking on more and being like, I got this. I could do it alone. No, I don't need help from anybody. And
Right.
that's not true.
No, definitely not. And you're right. Many of these problems didn't exist when we had systems in place, but they aren't in place now. And the systems that are in place almost seem hidden from people. A lot of people don't know what's out there.
Yeah,
I feel like on a weekly or sometimes daily basis, I find out about something. I'm like, I had no idea that was a thing.
totally.
Like, I didn't.
Yeah, even for example, I'm a parent of a special needs kid. My child has an IEP at school. That's an individualized education plan. I've been doing this with my child for 4+ years now. I'm still learning about organizations and resources where it's like, oh, have you heard of this one nonprofit? They're providing free parent advocates. And I'm like, oh my God, there's free parent advocates? Sign me up, right?
Right.
But you have to go out and seek those things on your own. They're a lot of times, like you're saying, totally invisible unless you're really digging.
Yes. Or you ask the right question. This is completely unrelated, but I had no idea. If you're going to go on a long vacation or you are a snowboard, we're in Florida, so snowbirds, and you're not going to use your car, let's say you're not going to use your car for a month, you can call your insurance company and get a policy for a parked car.
Yep.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So I'm in the middle of like 2 leases. And I was like, I'm not going to use the car. I'm just waiting it out. And they were like, oh, we'll just put a non-use policy on it or something. And I'm like,
Right.
what? I thought I have to pay hundreds of dollars more. But it's things like that. I didn't ask for that. I stumbled upon it, but it
Yeah.
existed. Things like that exist in every area, and especially in this work. And
And I would say too, so much of that is about corporations being allowed legally to just milk the individual for everything, right? I just coincidentally had something similar to you with
yeah,
my car being out of service and not having it for a while. Something else happened recently where I had canceled an airline ticket in 2025, and they told me the amount would be available as a credit. And then when I went a couple weeks ago to rebook and try to use my credit, it wasn't there. And when I reached out to customer service, they said, "Oh, that's because your travel credit expires after a year." And I was like, this is like literal physical money that I've already paid. Like, where does it go? Just into the coffers, right? And there's just a lot of ways where it feels like modern life is stacked against us by corporations.
yes, yes, especially here. I don't know if it's different
Yep.
everywhere, but it feels worse here. I work with a company out of Australia with something, and I wasn't alerted to a change in a policy. And so my rate was going to go up for something. And I just emailed them and said, this isn't in my budget because I didn't expect it. And within less than an hour, I got an email back. We've corrected it. This is our policy, but if since you didn't feel like you were aware of it, we're going to make an exception for you this time. And I was just like, that was so easy.
Yeah.
So easy. And it
Yeah.
really was me not reading between the lines and not understanding their policy. It was in writing, but they just, okay, okay. I was like,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
incredible. That felt
awesome.
good. It felt good.
Yeah.
And I, yeah, I think that a lot of corporations also operate along the belief that we won't ask questions, we won't push back, we won't say, I don't know this or whatever it is. Yes. Okay. So when and how would someone find you? I'm curious because this is a new idea that you had that you've turned into a business, which is great. You've it's very creative. How do people find you? How do you
Yeah. People find me either through word of mouth, like folks that I've already worked with, or
Yeah.
folks that are in my personal network who know what I'm doing will often recommend, hey, you should reach out to Jess. Someone's like, oh my God, my company's going through a reorg and I'm going to get a new manager and I'm so scared. That's a great time. I often work with people who are in those kind of situations. I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. I have a website, notworkingintech.com. I've got a podcast that came out this past spring, and we're gearing up for another season that we're going to start recording in the fall.
That's great.
So yeah, in the sort of regular channels that people find small businesses and providers, but also really quite a lot through word of mouth.
That's great. That's great. And do you feel good about where you are and how it's going and just
I'm at
how
the
it is?
beginning. It is going. I'm trying to grow my business, of course.
Yep.
I'm looking at different ways that I can scale myself and my message to be able to have broader groups of people take in the ideas that I'm sharing and really take action in their own lives,
Yeah.
right? I would love for everyone who's burnt out to just start taking leave right away.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
it's not for I don't gain anything financially from it, but the
Right.
companies that are burning out their employees receive a very strong message when that's happening.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's going really well. Of course, I'm just at the beginning of the not working in tech journey,
Yeah.
and I do have a lot of bigger goals over time. I would love to bring the same kind of spotlight that I'm bringing in tech to other industries
That's what I was going
because
to
it's
ask.
not just technology, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who are teachers, a lot of friends who work in healthcare.
Yep.
Those are two industries where I would say it's not working in education, it's not working in healthcare. I've got a friend who's a nurse who just goes to work when she's sick because they don't have a substitute or backup care, and she cares so much about her fellow nurses. It's I can't just let my coworkers bear the load when I'm out. I have to go to work. And
Right.
that's just crazy to me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Of course, teachers are so burnt out, and we don't do a good job in this country of elevating and rewarding excellent teachers with new career opportunities and more money. Like some of the best teachers, these people should be teaching millions of people how to be great teachers too.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, they should be paid like sports stars.
Exactly.
They are
Exactly.
heroes.
They are.
So I really do hope over time to bring that lens to other industries.
Yeah.
And coming from a public policy background, my hope is to influence policy over time. I would love to see more humane labor policies and work and leave policies that support everyone equally so that we can all feel that we're on equal footing and it's not just the person that can work 16 hours a day who gets ahead.
Yes, it feels like we've gone backwards a little bit the last few years, or that's,
Yeah.
yeah. So I hope you do have an impact on policy. I think
Thank you.
when I went to law school, my goal was I got a health law certificate and an MHA with the
Oh, that's
goal
awesome.
of really access to care was my policy goal. But I was in St. Louis and I was able to intern somewhere where that seemed possible. I was like, I'm going to have and there's policy work to do here. And then we moved to Florida. And it was like, oh, there's not anyone here. This is a needle in a haystack type job to look for.
Yeah, but there has to be the political will.
Yeah, and there just wasn't. And I quickly realized that. And I went into corporate healthcare and I hated it. Hated it. Yeah, not it was the only thing I liked about it was dressing up in my cute little suits. And then I was like, oh, this is terrible. What we're doing is no good. This is boring. It's the burnout is there. So yeah, many different
So hard.
industries and I think that younger people are really taken advantage of. I have a very close family member who's working in the banking industry, and it's not fair what is expected
Yeah.
of her because she
Yeah.
is moving up. She's moving up because she's talented, but they're going to lose her because she's dying sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's not home until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It's impossible to take time off. If she does, there's so much work for her to do when she returns. It's not fair. Because
Right.
she's in her 20s, it shouldn't be
Yeah.
expected that she kill herself to keep moving up. It's not fair.
Exactly. And there's this societal panic about, oh, why aren't young people doing this or that? Why aren't young people having kids? And it's not a mystery, right? When you share this
No.
story about your close family member,
Yeah.
how could she imagine if she wants to be a parent? How could she imagine being a parent, right?
Couldn't.
And giving the time that children deserve to be focused on. You should not have to choose between your health, your family, your humanity, and your career progression.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think there's a whole nother niche of maybe within tech and every other industry for mothers specifically, or people who want to be mothers. And yeah, you're right. People aren't having kids because they can't. They can't. Win-win. The cost of living is outrageous. It just in the last 3 years, it has elevated so much. I can't imagine what a young person is thinking about when they're looking at how much they can make, the amount of time that they have to work to make that, bringing someone else into the world. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a priority. It can't be.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
So,
and I would love to see. I think one of the really big things that guides me is you can't create what you don't envision. And
yeah,
so it's so important to have these conversations and talk about what we do envision, what we do want, what that those ideal policies look like. What does it look like to support parents and moms in the workplace? What does it look like to build a new paradigm where each of us isn't reinventing the wheel for childcare from 0 to 5, or each individual family isn't panicking in an emergency when they suddenly realize that their aging family member needs a lot more care than they've needed in the past. These are not individual problems. These are societal problems that we're forcing individuals to solve on their own. But it's really important to envision and imagine what would it look like so that we can build towards that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you so much. I love the work you're doing,
Thank you so
and
much.
I love it's brave to go out there and start something new and have a vision, and even brave to think about changing policy someday, because it seems like Mount Everest, but people have done it and they do it and they keep doing it. And
Absolutely.
that's how we get better. So,
Totally.
yeah, incredible work. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me, Leslie.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. For anybody who wants to find you, all of your information will be in the show notes on YouTube, Apple
Awesome.
Podcast, and Spotify, and we'll be sharing on Instagram. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I loved talking to you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share my work with you and your audience.
Thank you. And thanks for everyone listening in. Subscribe, follow, do all the things. Until next week. Thank you.
Thanks so much.